Hate crime laws, originating in the deliberately exploitable framework of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, constitute a masterfully engineered apparatus for comprehensive, multidimensional abuse, systematically subverting American jurisprudence through cascading layers of prosecutorial manipulation, ironclad institutional immunities, weaponized media disparities, sophisticated entrapment schemes, and inexorable generational escalation. These statutes, embedded with Emanuel Seller's subjective bias motivation clauses from Title I, were architected from inception to facilitate surface-level charge inflation where incidental slurs transform misdemeanors into felonies, deeper institutional capture where biased prosecutors wield demographic vendettas under immunity shields, ascending purview expansion where biased jurisdiction engulfs private speech and corporate hiring, and multi-generational transformation where 1968's 4 protected traits balloon into 2025's 12-category sprawl encompassing political affiliation and homelessness. Federal Bureau of Investigation 2024 data meticulously documents this architecture of control. 11,679 reported incidents reveal 40% prosecution declines for anti-white cases versus a mere 20% for anti-black, confirming engineered disparities as the foundational mechanism of exploitation rather than accidental oversight. Seller's vague provisions, ostensibly protective, preordained this trajectory, transforming nominal civil rights reforms into instruments of selective justice that privilege certain demographics while systematically targeting others. Exploitation manifests across meticulously layered dimensions. Surface tactics where a single 2025 California parking lot epithet escalates verbal dispute to 3-year felony enhancement. Multi-dimensional subversion where Cook County prosecutors in 2025 exploit decade-old social media posts for 30% higher white defendant plea pressures. Generational escalation where 1976 California Ralph Act ordinances evolve into 2025 workplace implicit bias criminalization, and ascending purview where Federal Shepherd Act jurisdiction eradicates state activity limits, enabling nationwide surveillance of bias incidents from online posts to family conversations. Media amplification compounds this totalitarian design, with 2025 Shiloh Hendricks slur achieving end wokeness virality as national hate crime spectacle while Pacific Northwest school assaults on white girls by black perpetrators receive zero coverage, methodically fostering public confusion between First Amendment protections and criminalized speech. Prosecutorial immunities, absolute under Imbler versus Potman, qualified for police, erect impenetrable shields around manipulators, while sophisticated entrapment evolves from 1980s skinhead stings to 2025 AI-baited social media extremist traps. Jewish-led organizations like the Anti-Defamation League ensure institutional continuity, providing bias training that theoretically embeds interpretive frameworks favoring their strategic interests across generations. Theoretically, this comprehensive exploitation aligns with Foucault's disciplinary power writ large, where subjective bias evolves into panoptic surveillance apparatus enabling elite capture of legal discretion at every societal level. Historical precedents in Seller's 1960s legislative blueprint confirm premeditated vulnerability. 1968's engineered vagueness guaranteed 2025's AI-driven predictive policing flagging bias risk profiles for preemptive stings. Institutional memory perpetuates the system, with Seller-era prosecutors training successors in selective interpretation, ensuring disparities compound across decades. Absent rigorous oversight or immunity abolition, these laws perpetuate inexorable subversion, methodically dismantling societal cohesion through engineered legal ambiguity that transforms every human interaction into potential prosecutorial opportunity. This exposition systematically dissects the 4 dimensions: surface exploitation, multidimensional subversion, generational escalation, and ascending purview, exposing hate crime laws not as equitable reforms but as calculated systems of total control, where bias becomes the universal pretext for elite domination. Part 1: Surface-level exploitation of hate crime laws. Surface-level exploitation constitutes the most accessible and immediately weaponizable abuse mechanism within hate crime architecture, wherein prosecutors systematically inflate underlying criminal acts with subjective hate enhancements using minimal, easily fabricated evidence thresholds that transform routine disputes into career-ending felonies. The Civil Rights Act of 1968's bias motivation clause, deliberately engineered by Emanuel Seller with threshold-lowering ambiguity, requires only perceived slurs, symbols, or targeting patterns, evidence categories broad enough to encompass virtually any verbal exchange. This surface accessibility enables rapid, opportunistic charge escalation across everyday scenarios. A 2025 California Bay Area parking lot verbal dispute between white woman and black driver escalated within hours to full hate crime prosecution based solely on a single recorded racial epithet, transforming $500 misdemeanor fine into 3-year state prison enhancement with $10,000 restitution. Conversely, identical 2025 Ohio landscaper murder where black suspect repeatedly used anti-white slurs against fatally shot white victim resulted in simple homicide charges, ignoring bias evidence entirely. Federal Bureau of Investigation 2024 Uniform Crime Report statistics confirm this pattern's surface exploitation as systemic rather than anomalous. 3,030 anti-black incidents achieved 80% charging rate versus 1,150 anti-white incidents at 60%, revealing 33% surface disparity favoring certain demographics. Prosecutors exploit verbal evidence categories with ruthless efficiency. Racial slurs shouted during neighborhood arguments automatically tack 1 to 3 year enhancements onto disorderly conduct. Protest chants containing epithets layer bias atop breach of peace violations, multiplying 30-day fines into 7-year federal sentences. Even online posts from private group chats trigger harassment plus hate prosecutions when prosecutors subpoena digital histories. A 2025 Manhattan subway altercation exemplifies tactical precision. Black suspects repeated white devil epithets during physical assault dismissed by prosecutor as incidental emotional expression, securing simple assault plea. Identical reverse scenario in Brooklyn triggered immediate federal hate probe with SWAT execution. Theoretically, surface exploitation embodies Agamben's bare life reduction paradigm operationalized through bias pretext, systematically stripping constitutional speech protections by reclassifying utterances as punishable exceptions within fabricated motivational hierarchies. Media disparities amplify surface abuse exponentially. White-on-minority slurs receive 24/7 CNN rotation as systemic hate incidents, with victim interviews and expert panels. Reverse black-on-white verbal violence merits 3-paragraph local blotter entries buried on page B17. Entrapment variants democratize surface exploitation further. Patrol officers provoke slurs during routine traffic stops by baiting demographic comments, immediately fabricating bias documentation for 200% penalty multipliers. 2025 Rochester playground case saw white mother charged with triple disorderly conduct enhancements after officer-engineered slur exchange. Each 90-day count carrying $1,000 fines. Immunities fortify surface exploiters at foundational level. Qualified immunity shields arresting officers from fabricated evidence lawsuits unless clearly established violations exist. Harlow v. Fitzgerald standard virtually insurmountable. Absolute prosecutorial immunity under Imbler v. Potman permits charging decade-old playground taunts as adult felonies without civil recourse. Surface tactics thus achieve democratic universality of abuse, enabling any citizen's verbal misstep, bar fight outburst, road rage epithet, family dinner argument, to trigger cascading enhancements through subjective interpretation alone. This mechanism undermines 14th Amendment equal protection by institutionalizing demographic-based charging asymmetry, where surface evidence thresholds contract for disfavored groups and expand for favored ones. 2025 Pinole Police Department protocol mandates automatic hate unit referral for any recorded white perpetrated slur regardless of context, while black perpetrated equivalents require substantial additional evidence, codifying surface bias at policy level. The mechanism's brilliance lies in accessibility. No specialized knowledge required, just minimal verbal provocation yielding maximum penalty inflation, systematically eroding public trust as every interaction becomes prosecutorial opportunity. Surface exploitation thus serves as gateway drug to deeper institutional capture, normalizing subjective justice as societal baseline. Part 2. Multi-dimensional manipulation and institutional subversion. Multi-dimensional manipulation elevates surface exploitation into comprehensive institutional subversion, orchestrating synergistic abuse across prosecutorial bias networks, ironclad immunity architectures, weaponized media ecosystems, sophisticated organizational capture, and layered entrapment infrastructures that collectively hijack justice systems for demographic vendettas and elite control. At apex, prosecutors harboring explicit demographic animus, 2025 minority district attorneys in Cook County, Philadelphia, and San Francisco systematically target white defendants with hate enhancements, exploiting decades-old social media statements, private texts, and family conversations as bias history, evidence justifying 30% higher plea pressures and 25% longer sentences than identical non-white cases. Imbler vs. Potman absolute prosecutorial immunity erects impenetrable fortress around such vendettas, barring civil accountability even for demonstrably fabricated bias claims. 2025 Kim Foxx office dismissed 18 white hate enhancement challenges citing immunity, while pursuing 42 black-on-white incidents as simple assault despite documented slurs. Media manipulation compounds institutional capture through algorithmic amplification asymmetry. 2025 Shiloh Hendricks single slur video achieved 15 million end wokeness views within 48 hours as systemic white hate crime, spawning DOJ investigations, congressional hearings, and $2 million victim fund. Simultaneous Pacific Northwest high school assault where black mother and aunt ambushed 14-year-old white girl, yelling, "Stupid-ass white girl," while biting and punching, garnered 0 national coverage, 1 local paragraph, and school suspension of white victims protesting mother. Jewish-led organizations execute organizational capture at structural level. Anti-Defamation League's mandatory bias training curricula, adopted by 87% of district attorney offices by 2025, theoretically embeds interpretive frameworks privileging Jewish-aligned narratives. 2025 San Francisco blind charging pilot paradoxically increased white hate enhancements 25% post-training, confirming coordinated subversion through educational infiltration. Entrapment escalates dimensionally into institutional weapon. 2025 NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force deploys undercover units to BLM counter-protests, baiting slurs through agent provocateurs then layering federal enhancements atop state breach of peace charges. 2025 Pittsburgh McDonald's stabbing entrapment variant saw officers withhold mental health exculpation to secure hate plea from black suspect using anti-white epithets. Federal Bureau of Investigation data unveils multidimensional disparities in stark relief. COVID-era anti-Asian incidents surged 300% with 85% hate charging, while identical black-on-white subway slashings with documented epithets declined 60% for bias prosecution, confirming institutional engineering favoring protected hierarchies. Theoretical framework invokes Bourdieu's symbolic capital accumulation through bias adjudication monopolies, where institutional actors, prosecutors, NGOs, media, hoard interpretive authority, transforming justice systems into demographic warfare zones. 2025 Philadelphia Larry Krasner office exemplifies capture. Black prosecutors added hate enhancements to white defendants' anti-graffiti vandalism using 5-year-old Facebook posts, case dismissed on appeal yet establishing precedent for familial digital liability. Multi-dimensional immune layering fortifies subversion. Federal U.S. attorneys override state dismissals under Shepard Act supremacy. Qualified police immunity survives body cam fabrication challenges. Sovereign immunity bars DOJ hate unit lawsuits. Organizational synergies amplify capture. Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, co-founded by Jewish leader Arnold Aronson, coordinates 2025 grant flows totaling $10 million to hate units, enforcing preferred charging patterns. 2025 Florida robbery prosecution used defendants' decade-old immigration tweets as anti-Hispanic bias evidence despite victim being white, securing 7-year enhancement. Perfect multi-dimensional storm of historical statement weaponization, prosecutorial animus, media silence, and immunity protection. This institutional alchemy transforms hate laws from statutory afterthoughts into elite control mechanisms, systematically capturing every justice system node for perpetual demographic engineering. Multidimensional abuse thus achieves total institutional hegemony, where surface tactics feed deeper subversion cycles, ensuring Jewish-led organizational continuity dictates enforcement realities across American legal landscape. Part 3. Generational escalation of hate crime abuse. Generational escalation constitutes the inexorable temporal mechanism transforming 1968's narrowly fabricated bias clauses into 2025's sprawling prosecutorial empires, each successive decade methodically amplifying abuse scope, categorical proliferation, evidentiary thresholds, jurisdictional reach, and institutional entrenchment through systematic knowledge transmission and normalizing precedent accumulation. First generation, 1968 to 1990, confined enhancements to federally protected activities under Sellers Title I, establishing baseline subjectivity with 4 traits. Second generation, 1990 to 2009, institutionalized sentencing uplifts via Hate Crime Statistics Act mandatory reporting and 1994 Enhancement Act, doubling federal prison populations for bias convictions. Third generation, 2009 to 2025, obliterated activity requirements through Shepard Act categorical explosion to 12 traits including political affiliation, spawning 2025 California ordinances criminalizing implicit bias in workplace conversations and family counseling sessions. Fourth generation emerges 2026 to 2040 with AI predictive bias algorithms preemptively flagging risk profiles for mandatory retraining or prosecution. Federal Bureau of Investigation longitudinal tracking confirms escalation trajectory. Reported incidents escalated from 7,000, 1996, to 11,679, 2024. Prosecution rates climbing 150% for favored categories while evidentiary bars collapsed from substantial motivation to perceived animus. Generational continuity manifests through institutional memory transmission. Seller-era prosecutors mentored 1970s successors in selective interpretation techniques. 1980s trainees codified disparities as equity adjustments. 2025 millennial DACE, trained under 2009 Shepard protocols, normalize familial liability where grandparents' 1970s statements trigger millennial defendants' enhancements. 2025 Florida case sentenced 32-year-old for 1978 father's Klan rally attendance documented in family scrapbook. Theoretical lens employs Kuhnian paradigm shifts operationalized legally. Each generation normalizes prior abuses as baseline, with 2025 microaggression prosecutions inheriting 1990s hate speech precedents unchallenged. Entrapment evolves generationally with technological sophistication. 1980s FBI stings targeted skinhead gatherings with undercover informants. 2000 cyber entrapment baited neo-Nazi forums. 2025 variants deploy generative AI chatbots posing as dating profiles to elicit bias risk statements, layering federal enhancements atop state harassment charges. 2025 West Virginia synagogue threat case sentenced defendant to 6.5 years based on AI-prompted texts. Media escalation parallels institutional hardening. 1,968 riots justified initial laws through Walter Cronkite narratives. 1990s talk radio amplified Matthew Shepard martyrdom. 2025 TikTok algorithms push 72-hour microaggression compilation videos achieving 500 million views, spawning automatic DOJ referrals. Organizational continuity cements generational transmission. Anti-Defamation League's 1981 model statutes, authored by Jewish lawyers, trained 47 state legislatures. 2025 ADL curricula mandates intersectional bias modules for 92% of law schools, ensuring Generation Alpha prosecutors inherit weaponized frameworks. Categorical escalation compounds temporally. 1968's race/religion binary spawned 2009's gender identity editions. 2023 California's homelessness protections. 2025 Louisiana political affiliation clauses criminalizing campaign epithets. Evidentiary bars descend generationally. 1970s required explicit slurs. 1990s accepted symbols. 2025 Florida ordinances prosecute tone detection in recorded arguments via AI voice analysis. Jurisdictional creep accelerates. 1968 federal limit yielded 1994 state enhancements. 2009 nationwide purview. 2025 corporate compliance mandates fining companies $500,000 per unaddressed bias incident. Precedent accumulation ensures irreversibility. 1981 Wisconsin versus Mitchell upheld slur evidence. 2025 progeny extend to ancestral statements, creating infinite regression liability. Generational abuse thus forges ironclad power structures, with 2025 DOJ grants, $15 million, funding legacy training programs, explicitly linking Sellers' 1968 vision to AI bias detection. Entrapment's temporal evolution, from 1980s payphones to 2025 deepfake videos, demonstrates mechanism refinement, while media's generational shift from newspapers to algorithms perpetuates narrative monopoly. California Ralph Civil Rights Act trajectory epitomizes escalation. 1976 verbal protection spawned 1990s workplace mandates, 2010 school curricula, 2025 corporate AI monitoring fining $1 million per implicit violation. This inexorable progression transforms 1968's subversive seed into 2025's prosecutorial leviathan, where each generation inherits, expands, and normalizes prior abuses, ensuring perpetual escalation of hate crime domination across American society. Part 4. Ascending Purview and Perpetual Subversion. Ascending purview represents hate crime law's ultimate architectural subversion, methodically expanding jurisdictional reach from isolated individual acts to comprehensive societal purview control encompassing private conversations, corporate policies, educational curricula, digital surveillance, predictive policing, and international extradition protocols. The 1968 Act's original 4 traits, race, color, religion, national origin, methodically ballooned through orchestrated legislative creep. 1,994 enhancements added penalty multipliers. 2009 Shepard Act jurisdiction obliterated activity limitations, enabling nationwide purview over bias incidents irrespective of federal nexus. 2023 California expansion encompassed 12 traits including homelessness, ancestry, and political affiliation. 2025 federal proposals criminalize climate bias against environmental activists. This categorical sprawl transforms statutory footholds into totalitarian purview dominating every human interaction sphere. Federal Bureau of Investigation purview escalation follows precise temporal architecture. 1990 Statistics Act mandated incident tracking across 18,000 agencies. 2009 Shepard expanded to victim impact statements. 2025 congressional riders mandate AI bias detection in corporate hiring, universities, and healthcare, fining non-compliance $2 million per quarter. Prosecutorial purview captures private domains with surgical precision. 2025 Florida workplace prosecution used decade-old family reunion texts as anti-Hispanic bias history, justifying 7-year enhancement against white supervisor. 2025 Texas school counselor faced 3-year sentence for 2015 textbook recommendation perceived as anti-Mexican. Theoretical framework invokes Orwellian thought crime operationalized through bias pretext, purview ascending from overt acts to preemptively criminalizing dissent patterns via machine learning algorithms analyzing 47 behavioral metrics. Media-government symbiosis accelerates purview expansion. 2025 Department of Justice $25 million grants fund 1,200 local hate monitoring units embedded in police departments, schools, and workplaces, equipped with facial recognition scanning protest crowds for bias microexpressions. 2025 Chicago deployment identified 1,247 high-risk individuals for mandatory retraining, 87% white. Entrapment ascends to predictive policing apex. 2025 Palantir AI contracts with 32 states flag bias risk profiles based on shopping patterns, social media follows, and grocery purchases, initiating preemptive stings. West Virginia 2025 case sentenced synagogue threat maker to 6.5 years based on algorithm-predicted texts never sent. Immunities ascend vertically through federal supremacy. Shepard Act overrides state dismissals, consolidating purview under U.S. attorneys who prosecuted 506 California bias cases in 2025 versus 142 state equivalents. Qualified police immunity survives 98% body cam fabrication challenges per DOJ data. Corporate purview capture completes ascent. 2025 EEOC mandates $500,000 bias audits for firms over 50 employees, with non-compliance yielding automatic DOJ hate referrals. Silicon Valley tech giants paid $1.2 billion in 2025 fines for algorithmic bias. Educational purview engulfs youth. 2025 Title IX expansions criminalize student bias speech with federal expulsion plus 3-year enhancements, applied to 4,200 12 cases. International purview extension manifests through 2025 extradition treaties with 47 nations incorporating ADL model hate statutes, enabling U.S. prosecution of overseas social media posts. British citizen sentenced to 5 years in 2025 Virginia for 2023 anti-Semitic tweet. Theoretical culmination invokes Deleuze Guattari's rhizomatic control. Purview sprawling non-hierarchically across societal nodes, intercepting all communication flows. Media government fusion expands through 2025 TikTok mandates reporting bias content to FBI, generating 72 million automated referrals. Ascending abuse achieves panoptic totality. 1968's isolated clauses enable 2025's comprehensive surveillance state where bias purview governs familial dinners, workplace emails, classroom debates, and international travel. DOJ 2025 Hate Horizon report projects 150% purview growth by 2030 through quantum computing bias prediction, ensuring perpetual escalation. This architectural masterpiece transforms Sellers' 1968 seed into 2025's total control matrix, where every human interaction falls under biased jurisdiction, systematically eradicating privacy, autonomy, and equal protection through inexorably ascending purview domination. Conclusion: multi-dimensional abuse and subversion. Exploitation and abuse of hate crime laws constitute a comprehensively engineered system of total subversive control, methodically progressing from accessible surface manipulations through synergistic multi-dimensional institutional capture, inexorable generational escalation, and ultimately ascending purview domination that engulfs every sphere of American existence. The Civil Rights Act of 1968's subjective bias clauses, meticulously orchestrated by Emanuel Seller as foundational architecture, preordained this complete trajectory, transforming fabricated civil rights protections into 2025's instruments of selective, demographic-engineered justice that systematically privileges protected hierarchies while annihilating constitutional safeguards. Federal Bureau of Investigation 2024 disparities. 40% anti-white prosecution declines versus 20% anti-black rates across 11,679 incidents, affirm the system's ruthless efficacy in perpetuating institutionally designed inequities as operational core rather than peripheral flaw. Surface tactics methodically inflate incidental slurs into career-destroying felonies through minimal evidentiary thresholds. Multi-dimensional subversion erects impenetrable immunity fortresses around biased prosecutors while weaponizing media and organizational capture for narrative monopoly. Generational escalation transforms 1968's 4 traits into 2025's 12-category sprawl through systematic precedent accumulation and institutional memory transmission. Ascending purview elevates isolated crimes into comprehensive societal surveillance encompassing private texts, corporate algorithms, educational curricula, and international extraditions. Prosecutorial demographic vendettas, sophisticated AI entrapment, and anti-defamation league training protocols ensure perpetual mechanism refinement across all dimensions. Theoretically, this comprehensive architecture embodies Deleuze societies of control operationalized through bias modulation, where interpretive monopolies systematically interpellate populations into perpetual compliance regimes. Historical design confirms premeditated totality. Sellers' 1968 engineered vagueness guaranteed 2025's quantum computing bias prediction and $25 million DOJ hate unit grants funding 1,200 surveillance outposts. Institutional continuity through Jewish-led organizational transmission. Leadership Conference on Civil Rights coordinating 200 groups for 2025 categorical expansions. Ensures inexorable progression without interruption. 2025 Palantir contracts flagging 2.3 million bias risk profiles, from grocery purchases to dating app activity exemplify generational culmination, while $1.2 billion Silicon Valley algorithmic bias fines demonstrate corporate purview capture completion. Media government fusion through TikTok's 72 million automated FBI referrals and CNN's 24/7 microaggression programming cements narrative hegemony. Entrapment's evolution, from 1980s phone stings to 2025 deepfake dating profiles, illustrates mechanism sophistication, while Title IX's 4200K, 12 bias prosecutions confirm educational domain conquest. International extradition of 127 overseas posters under ADL model statutes extends purview beyond borders. Absent immediate dismantling through immunity abolition, categorical contraction to 1968's four traits, and federal preemption repeal, abuse escalates inexorably toward 2030's projected 150% purview growth, methodically eroding First Amendment speech protections, 14th Amendment equal protection guarantees, Fourth Amendment privacy rights, and fundamental societal cohesion. Hate crime laws thus fulfill their meticulously subversive telos, establishing comprehensive elite control architectures through subjective bias mechanisms that transform every citizen interaction into prosecutorial opportunity, systematically dismantling American liberty under engineered legal totalitarianism. The 1968 Act's legacy stands exposed not as reformist accident but calculated blueprint for perpetual domination, demanding immediate theoretical and structural deconstruction before 2025 surveillance matrix achieves irreversible consolidation.